Hey guys, my name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming my worst books of the year video. When you read over 100 books in a year, you're probably gonna read a few books that freaking suck. Like, that's just what happens, you know? And I just wanted to make a disclaimer at the beginning of this video that this video is not meant to be disrespectful to either the authors or the publishers or anybody who enjoys any of these books. Like, you are totally valid with your opinions, just like I am totally valid with my opinions. It's totally fine. Like, I'm not trying to shame you if you love this book. Like, that's great. Like, I'm really glad that you can find enjoyment in these books because I certainly couldn't. This video is just meant to be fun. It's just talking about all the books that irritated me the most this year, most of my 1-star reads, you know? I will say though that this year, this list is the shortest I think that it's ever been, with only like 8 or 9 books. So I did have a pretty good reading year. Like, I didn't read that many books that sucked this year, so that's great. Starting off my worst books of the year, I'm gonna start with A Stranger on the Beach by Michelle Campbell. There's nothing objectively bad about this book, but it was just so freaking boring. And as far as thrillers go, I feel like this one is one of the most predictable, most basic thrillers I think that I've ever read. It follows this girl who has this kind of shady husband, and then there's this stranger that's on their beach property, like this guy that's just on the beach property. I think my issue with this main character is that she's just way too naive and trusting, and it's almost just like unrealistic how naive and trusting she is. The thrills in this book are very minimal, and the mystery is just not really mysterious at all. It's just so easy to figure this book out, and I don't know, I guess I could see how maybe somebody who doesn't read a lot of thrillers might enjoy this one, but for me, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this is so freaking predictable and boring. Another thriller that I found to be incredibly predictable like that one is The Night Before by Wendy Walker. And this is one that I was super kind of disappointed by because I had some high expectations for this one because I really liked Wendy Walker's previous thriller that I read. And this one's another one of those thrillers that it's like, are you freaking serious? Like, anybody could see this coming. And like, the thriller aspect of this story is just so weak. Like, it's really boring, really bland. All the characters are one-dimensional and you just don't care about any of them. And I just expected more. Like, I don't know, this story was just not great. The next one that I have was actually the very first book that I read in 2019, and I am freaking cursed, dude. The first book I read in a year is always one of my worst books of the year. Like, every single time, I swear that I'm cursed, and that is The Perfect Nanny. It is a really short thriller novel, but like, oh my god, it's so freaking slow and boring and nothing even happens in this book. Like, the whole premise is that this nanny was like watching these kids, and I think in the very first chapter it's revealed that like she killed the kids, or like they believe that she killed the kids or something like that. And so in the very first chapter you get this really good first chapter of it being like really creepy, like them finding the kids and whatever. I don't even remember, but the first chapter is really great. But then the next chapter it starts like a flashback to like see how they got to that point. So boring. Oh my gosh, like literally the entire book, like you already know how it ends from the first chapter, so you're literally just reading to see how they got to that point, and it's just like so slow and boring and you don't care. The next book on this list is actually going to be a nonfiction book that I read this year that I just do not understand the hype with this one, and I think this book is not that great, and that is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. This one is just, oh my god, I feel like this book is trying so hard to be like cool and relatable with the kids and stuff, you know? I can't stand self-help books, so maybe this will be more of like a me thing than the book thing, but I can't stand an author being like, I figured out the best way to live life and now I'm gonna teach you my ways, and it's some like privileged white dude telling you how to like live your best life, and his advice in this book is so stupid. He's always just like, well, you just have to only give a fuck about things that you actually should give a fuck about. And it's like, yeah, if only it were that simple. Like, whoa, why didn't I think of that? And like, I didn't like either his comments about like his wife and their marriage, and he'd be like, if she doesn't look good in that dress, then I will tell her because my wife appreciates my honesty and whatever. And it's like, or maybe you're just a douchebag. Like, did you ever think of that? I don't know, this book just did not sit well with me. It just came off as like very pretentious, and like his privilege like really came through in this because it was just like, he was just saying how it took him so long to figure out what he wanted to do with his life, but it's fine because he always had this family and all of these friends to like rely on, and all of these people were supporting him for so long because he couldn't support himself. And like, does he not realize like you have to be in a place of privilege in order to only give a fuck about the things you want to give a fuck about? It was not a good time. I did not like this one. The next one on this list is 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. This one was a massive disappointment for me because Sally Thorne wrote one of my favorite romance novels of all time, The Hating Game, and so I had really high expectations for her second release. This book was just terrible. This book was really hard to read because it follows from the point of view of this girl Darcy, and she's really crushing on this guy Tom that she like grew up with. Darcy is just such an unlikable main character for me, which is fine. Like, I don't need the female lead characters to be likable. Like, it's totally fine, but there's just something about her, like, I just didn't connect with anything with her, and it was really hard to read this book because Darcy and Tom have this whole past and this whole history that you don't know about as a reader. And they have all these like inside jokes that they like talk to each other about, but then it's never like explained to the reader. Like, it's really confusing to read this. And I just very, very quickly like lost interest in this, and I was not enjoying myself while I read this. Sally Thorne has so much potential and she could do better than this, and this was just a steaming pile of garbage. I wasn't a huge fan of Tom either. Like, I felt like all of these characters were so flat and so dull and so boring to read about. Like, it just sucked. The next book on this list is going to be Baby Teeth. This one is one that I was also really looking forward to. It's an adult thriller, and I've heard some really great things about this book, and this was the first book that I gave 1 star to in 2019. Like, I just really did not enjoy this book. And it sucks because it started off promising enough because it's about this little girl who is like a demonic child, and she acts like a little angel for her dad, but then when her dad leaves and she's left alone with her mom, she turns into like this psycho demon child who like lights shit on fire, and like, I don't even know, she just does a bunch of crazy shit. This book started off fine, but then I realized like literally every scene in this book is the same shit over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's like literally after 200 pages of it, you just get sick of reading the same thing over and over again. It was like interesting at first because I thought the story would be like going somewhere. Like, I thought it was gonna build to some like crazy shit, you know? But this story literally never goes anywhere. It's just this little girl acting psycho for most of the book, and it just doesn't ever go anywhere. And it's like, okay, what was the point of all that? I don't know. It was just very repetitive and annoying, and it just didn't go anywhere. We're getting down to my top 3 worst books of the year. In third place, I have Fix Her Up by Tessa Bailey. This book was just not it for me. This book is a romance novel, and I think the thing that bugs me the most about this novel is Travis Ford's character. I really just can't stand him. He's like my least favorite type of male character in a romance. He's just very douchey and controlling. He's a Major League Baseball player in this book, right? And they literally call him Two Bats. Like, ugh, gross. His relationship with Georgie in this book is just so like, ugh, vomit. Like, he keeps calling her baby girl literally like 4 times on the same freaking page. Like, it's ridiculous how much he calls her baby girl, and also like, ew, as a nickname, like, ugh, that is so gross. But also, like, the way that Travis keeps saying, like, whoa, she's like my little sister, but then he, like, is sexualizing her in the same thought as that. Like, whoa, I can't be attracted to her because she's like my little sister, and then he's, like, thinking about her in a sexual way. Like, it just felt very wrong and weird. And not to mention the sex scenes in this book were so over the top and cringy. Like, he's literally like about to like have sex with her, and he's like, get ready to meet your god. Like, what the fuck, dude? It's just so cringy. Like, I mean, I guess everyone has their taste, but Travis Ford is not it for me. Like, I can't take romance novels like this. Like, I can't. The second worst book of the year for me is Not the Girl You Marry by Andy J. Christopher. I am hella surprised that this book ended up on this list. I had really high hopes for this book because it's a millennial makeover for How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, which is one of my favorite movies growing up. I freaking loved that movie so hard. This book was a hot mess. This book is another one of those books where the characters are like really over the top sexual with each other like immediately, and it's like uncomfortable. Like, how many times did they mention his dick in the first chapter or something? Like, ugh. Made a tab right here that says eye roll. She literally tells him, you walk like you have a big dick, on page 23. Like, Oh, okay. This story is just like incredibly vulgar, like sexually in a way that I wasn't expecting, and it's kind of just like off-putting. It's kind of in the same way as like Fix Her Up. Like these books have these like cutesy romance covers, and then they're like incredibly sexual and vulgar, which is fine, but like it's just really unexpected. And I feel like in this book, even the way that these characters talk to each other and describe each other, they're just like incredibly vulgar, and it's like, whoa. He literally calls her a sexy rabid raccoon. In what world is that a compliment? And this book was so repetitive with the way it would be like, because you know, the whole thing is that they're both using each other for promotion, right? That's like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That's like what the story is about. But they'll both be like in their narrated parts, they'll both just be like, man, I really like her. If only I could actually be with her and I wasn't just using her. Or like, if only he knew that I really actually liked him and I was just, it's too bad that I'm using him. And like, that shit was like so repetitive over and over and over and over. Jesus freaking Christ, we get it. Oh my god. Not only that, but just these two main characters had absolutely no chemistry. I just was not digging this book at all. It was really repetitive and really over the top, like sexual and weird, and I was just bummed that I didn't like this one. It was just a hot mess. Alright, and my number one worst book of 2019 is Supermarket by Bobby Hall, aka Logic. I honestly don't even know how this book got published. Like, to be real with you, like for reals, I don't know how this book got published. I mean, I guess I know how because Bobby Hall is Logic, who's a famous rapper who probably had the financial abilities to publish this, but god, this book gave me a migraine trying to read this. This book tries to be something so clever. It thinks, like, this book thinks that it's Fight Club, I think. Bobby Hall thought that he was writing like the next great masterpiece of a book. Like I feel like in this book he's just trying so hard to make this book like really cool. The writing in this book was just awful. Like it felt like a little kid wrote this book and like threw it all together. Like has he never heard of a complex sentence? I don't even know the words I can use to describe how bad the writing is in this book. Like it just did not flow at all. The main character would like try to break the fourth wall with the reader and be like, yeah, reader, and like talk to the reader, which was really, really weird, and it just did not work for this. Like, I don't mind when characters try to like break the fourth wall in a movie because it's like funny almost, like kind of like Deadpool, you know, when he like talks to the audience. But like in a book format, it just did not work at all, and I've never seen that before in a book where like the main character in a story will like talk to the person reading the book. Like it's very, very strange, and it just did not work for me. There was this scene that just did not sit well with me because it was like the main character was talking about this black woman that he was talking to, and he's like, in his mind, his narration, he was like, she's so dark. And it was like about her personality, and just the way he would have to like go back and be like, whoa, I didn't mean that as a race thing, I was talking about her personality, and like trying to clarify like what he said, and it was just like so unnecessary. And like, why was this even in the book? Like it was just so awkward and just like ugh to read about. The main character in this book really just drove me nuts. Like he just thought he was like the shit, and he thought he was smarter than everyone, and it's just like, he's so freaking annoying to read about in this book. Like, he's so annoying. Not to mention, like, the plot in this book is so strange. Like, it's just so weird. And there's, like, scenes in this book that don't even make sense. Like, I'm trying to think of that scene when he, like, goes in for the job interview that he's gonna get at the supermarket, and he, like, imagines punching the guy in the face, like the guy who's offering him the job. He like has this whole like imagination, like daydream about punching this guy in the face or whatever, and then he realizes like none of that even happened or something, and he just imagined the whole thing. And the writing is very weird, and I don't understand the purpose for like half of the scenes that exist in this book. Those are all of my worst books that I read in 2019. I mean, compared to reading years in the past, I feel like I had a lot better of a reading year this year. I didn't read that many things that pissed me off and sucked that bad. Let me know what your thoughts are on any of these books, if you read any of these books, and let me know what are some of your worst books of the year. Like, what are the absolute worst, most disappointing books that you read in 2019? Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you soon with a new video.